Hello and welcome to FieldMade's D2C Inspiration Series, where we're partnering up with experts in the field to talk to marketers and founders from leading brands. I'm Tina, I lead marketing here at FieldMade. We're a Shopify agency that specializes in custom development and design, conversion rate optimization, and Klaviyo email and SMS marketing. I have two really awesome guests here today. We have Chase from Recharge Payments and Danny from Bokksu. We're obviously going to talk about subscriptions today, but first, why don't you both introduce yourselves? And Danny, let's start with you.
Sure. Hey, everyone. I'm Danny Taing. I'm the founder and CEO of Bokksu. My brief background is I'm from New York, and I went to school at Stanford and studied psychology and Japanese. After I graduated, I got a job at Google, worked there for a year, but then kind of the highlight of my life was when I got to move to Tokyo after quitting Google and living there for 4 years. That's where I kind of got business fluent in Japanese, got to travel around the country, eat a lot of amazing food and snacks. And then when I moved back to New York City about 8 years ago, I kind of lost access to all that. That was a very abridged version of how I kind of stumbled into entrepreneurship and, solo bootstrap, founded Bokksu around 6 years ago now, was Recharge from the very beginning, Shopify and Recharge, and have grown kind of alongside them. And here we are today where we ship nearly 1 million boxes worldwide directly from Japan to about 100 countries around the world. I'm very excited to be here to talk all things marketing with everyone.
That's incredible. I love it. Chase, what about you?
Danny, I should have gone first. I can't follow that intro. That was too much. I'm Chase Alderton. Appreciate the intro, Tina. I work at Recharge. Under the partner team. So I'm a partner marketing manager. A lot of my day-to-day role is working to tell stories, not only Recharge stories, but also our partner agency stories. Danny and I have gotten to know each other over the years being at Recharge, and fortunately we've told his story a couple times, but there's a lot of different tweaks and kind of changes throughout that story and a lot of edits. So I'm excited to dig back in today, talking subscriptions and retention.
Amazing. Thank you both for joining today. And Chase, I'll let you take it over for the Q&A.
Sweet. Thank you so much. So Danny, I know you already gave a bit of an intro on Bokksu. Anything else you want to add there? I want to kind of open up the doors and let you run with it.
Yeah, I mean, if people aren't familiar with Bokksu yet, our whole mission and purpose and what we do is that we bridge cultures through authentic kind of food, products, and media. What that means is we actually directly partner with these like centuries old generational family snack maker businesses throughout Japan, from Hokkaido to Kyushu to Okinawa, where we're sourcing the like way beyond Pocky or Haichu. It's like Hokkaido red bean buns, Okinawan pineapple cookies, etc. And some of these families have been making it like as if for 5-6 generations or more. And it's all sourced there, it's packed there. And then we, more than just a box of snacks, every single month we create this kind of culture guide magazine where we write the copy ourselves, we do all the photography ourselves, we really try and show the story and interviews with makers of like when you're subscribing and purchasing Bokksu, every box you buy supports these kind of like traditional family businesses and keeps their kind of history alive. And that's kind of the core business where we started a subscription box, and we've expanded in multiple ways since then. I'm sure we'll get to those type of conversations, but yeah, that's kind of where we started. And it's been a kind of a wild ride where I launched in April 2016 with about 40 subscribers, most of which were friends supporting me. And it was me packing boxes in my living room in New York City, to now we have approaching 40,000 subscribers worldwide. And so it's been a wild journey the last 5.5 years.
Love the intro story. I actually also, something you mentioned earlier, you studied psychology. I did as well. Random point that I don't think we're going to dig into, but I love the orange box. You don't see a lot of orange for food, but really any kind of boxes. So getting that box shipped and having this like bright neon orange, awesome colored box, I think is a really cool marketing tactic to kind of just stand out from everyone else.
Yeah, not to change the camera angle, but I was actually using the box to elevate the computer to kind of have the right angle, but it's multi-purpose. But yeah, actually that was on purpose when I first created the color. I know it's like we're talking about psychology here a little bit, but the Japanese color, the flag, it's the like darker red, and that's like the kind of color that many companies for Japan has been using for so many years. And I wanted to kind of have a modern spin on it, which is why I took like a shade kind of lighter, getting closer to orange, because I wanted it to be a conversation piece in people's homes. Like it would be there. People usually leave it on their dining room tables or coffee tables for people to snack on. I guess nowadays there's not as many home visits, but back in the day when people would have dinner parties, like that would be people, and I've heard this from customers and friends, people would show up and be like, hey, what's that orange box? And be like, oh, let me tell you about it. So it's like a really nice word of mouth guerrilla marketing thing. That's one of the reasons I chose the color.
We got to slow down on all these things. There's so many questions I have. So let's hop right in, talking about retention, all these kind of things. So you mentioned up front, you've been with Recharge forever, which means you've obviously been in the subscription landscape for a long, long time. How have you seen this landscape kind of change and adapt and adjust? I know we're probably all kind of, bored to death around all COVID talk, but how have you seen kind of things shift from like early adoption and people not really sure what's going on to now like subscriptions are a real thing and everyone kind of knows what they're buying into?
If you're saying early adoption, do you even mean like early 2010s when Subbox was first coming into the scene, or do you mean from the beginning of Bokksu in 2016?
Start from Bokksu. Yeah, start from Bokksu.
Yeah, I was like, I'm not sure how far back we want to talk about.
That's just a history lesson. We go back that far.
Yeah. I mean, with me, when I kind of, like I said, Bootstrap launched it in April 2016, I would consider that to be this like, there was a bit of a lull period in subscription boxes. And that was almost like the burst after like kind of some of the Birchbox, and there was this like hesitancy that investors and even some consumers had where they felt like, oh, it was a fad that's now kind of over. So there was actually this difficulty at first. I mean, and Recharge was even brand new. Like back in the day, pre-Recharge, right? It had to be all custom. But thanks to Recharge, I was able to get this going, and I was like, trying to make. I consider ourselves part of like kind of the new rising generation of subscription boxes, kind of along the lines of FabFitFun and all these things I've done very well, where it's no longer just a box of like sample or derivative products. It's like real experiences that people are getting, like community experience culture. And I would say that did start around the 2015, 2016 type of time period. And it kind of steadily went up. And there were some rough spots along the way, but then COVID really accelerated everything in 2020, where all of a sudden people were stuck at home. And it wasn't even just about that they couldn't get these products in stores. It was that people wanted to have richer kind of in-depth experiences that sometimes were multimedia. Like good subscription boxes aren't just a box of products. They allow you to like, go to this website or use this QR code, whatever it is, to kind of link you to this online community or experiential thing to talk with other people. In our case, for example, we have a Facebook group that nowadays I think is probably over 5,000 people. I haven't looked recently, but that like every day is posting about their kind of unboxing or just Japanese culture or which type of foods they like. And so it helps them feel connected in a world where sometimes it's a little disconnected.
I'm really glad you brought up the community piece. I was going to get into that. One of the things I want to touch right before we get there is you have a really interesting offering at Bokksu. It obviously starts with the subscription box with where Recharge called curation. So it's something that you pick or your team picks, whatever products go into that box. It's not something where the customer can log on and say, I want these 5 things. That's kind of the curation side of it. And that's pretty straightforward is how we see a lot of subscription box start. You've actually added this other marketplace piece where they can do like a subscribe and save model for that other piece, where once you see products that you like in the box, you can then log on to your site and actually buy more higher quantities of those box on a subscription model. Did I miss anything there? Is that pretty accurate?
I haven't introduced subscribe and save into it, but they can certainly go and order anytime. But we are using other types of replenishment things, such as like if we notice that they're buying something quite often, we can send them an email being like, hey, would you like to one-click buy all these things again, as opposed to kind of doing a subscribe and save. And the reason we haven't done a subscribe and save just yet is because it's very special and unique to Bokksu. I mean, if we could, we would. It's that a lot of our inventory is not stable. Like what makes Bokksu special besides the curation is the limited edition, seasonally limited kind of nature of a lot of our products, where this is a very Japanese thing where things kind of only exist for 3 or 4 months. I mean, to use an easy, relatable example, Japanese Kit Kats, a lot of people know, there's over like 300 to 400 flavors of Japanese Kit Kats, and most of them don't exist anymore. They just kind of existed for like a few months. So that makes it kind of tough to allow people to subscribe and save when it's a constantly changing inventory, which of course has its own challenges, but then keeps it fresh and exciting for customers.
Absolutely. So I know we're here to kind of talk about retention. So I want to keep that retention lens on this. And I want to introduce the Makers series also. That's part of one of my favorite things at Bokksu. Talk about how this series, the Makers series, really lends itself to retention, kind of with a lens of kind of looking at community. Like you have people log on and you see these videos. How does that keep people still on Bokksu and still subscribing month over month?
Yeah, so for context, Chase is referring to that about 2 years ago in 2019, we had this really big project. We spent a whole year planning and doing, which is that I went back to Japan again. And of course, this was all pre-COVID. And this time with like a small documentary film crew. And for over 2 weeks, we went and visited 5 of our traditional to modern family snack maker businesses and recorded them, and me interviewing them in Japanese, showing the the people making the actual products. Like one of them was like an 80-year-old man who's been like kind of kneading candy for like 50 years or something crazy, the story. And it kind of got inspired because I had met a lot of our makers and made these relationships, and I was stunned by some of the stories. I'm like, we need to tell these stories to our customer base. And so we created this it was a lot of time and investment and personal money. And I even knew that this wouldn't have short-term gains. I knew this wouldn't necessarily like acquire us customers right away. We even took that content and ran ads on it, and it actually wasn't that super successful. However, exactly what Chase was saying, it's actually done wonders for us in terms of retention, because this is us really showing that, you know, once again, as I said before, like if you subscribe at every box you purchase, it's supporting these people. This is real. Like we're not just saying it in like copy on an ad. You can now see videos and the faces and the names of who you're supporting by subscribing to Bokksu. And we've like kind of not only retained more customers that way, and actually a really interesting side effect that we only discovered this past year, now that we've grown a lot and we've been hiring, for example, we now have over 30 full-time employees and we're hiring another 30 in the next year, is this actually helped us acquire and retain talent too. Because now people see that when they look us up and they're like, oh, wow, this is the real deal. This is a purpose-driven company. They're not just like saying this. And then that has also helped with that. It's actually a very, very multifaceted.
Does this Maker Series start as a retention tool, or did it start as just like, let's continue to show everybody, you know, who we're actually buying from? You know, we're not just buying wholesale and shipping them over in mass. Like we're buying from families. This is traditional. This is the way you do it.
It actually started as, I kind of thought about it from like a almost three-pronged approach when I first concepted this in like late 2018 or early 2019, whatever it was. It was that one, we could use this for acquisition. And as I mentioned, like that didn't super pan out, but since there are the two prongs, number two was that we would now have this type of rich content that would be evergreen living on our site that we could use to really up our brand equity, which in the end is about retention, right? When you up your brand equity and brand awareness, you're actually investing into the future where you're not just some fleeting fatty thing. You're proving to people that you're not only investing in your own kind of content, your makers and vendors, but also that you're producing things like essentially for free for these customers to engage them into the product. So it's multimedia. And number three, which is something that's still a bit of a dream for us, is to take the content, to chop it up into, edit it into like a pilot, and then pitch it to like Netflix or Apple TV to eventually get some type of serialization of this and make it a real series. Unfortunately, there's no way to actually travel to Japan right now to do a season 2, but one day is still in kind of our back pocket. So kind of using the three-pronged approach, even if one of the three failed, not failed, but kind of had a bumpiness to it, then we could still have a lot of positive impact from it.
Absolutely. It's a great strategy to not kind of put all your eggs in one basket and have a couple different approaches to this thing. And just in case one does fail, not even fail, but in case one doesn't quite pan out like acquisition, you still have a couple of the other ideas to push you forward there. Sticking on this retention idea, when do you start thinking about retention? Is it before anyone even hits the site, even purchases, or is this something like, great, they bought, now let's start thinking about how to keep them retained for a while?
Oh, no, it's totally right. Like way before they even purchased. It's about structuring your entire product offering and what it is that customers are going to be getting to then kind of forecast for that retention. I mean, a good, easy to relate example is prepaid subscriptions. So for us, we have 1, 3, 6, 12-month kind of plans that people can do that are auto-renewing. And I know that from what I've learned now by having talked to a lot of people, that apparently most sub boxes are majority monthly subs, which kind of blows my mind in a bad way, because that is a high churn when you're hitting their credit cards every month. We are actually a majority prepaid subscription base, where the vast majority are 3-month, and then is 1 month and 6 and 12, but then 3, 6, 12 make up something like 70% of our subscriber base.
Oh, wow.
And so that is planned in advance, so that what type of checkout flow and funnel do we put the customers through? What type of discounting and pricing do they see? What type of value are we giving them in the additional kind of plans to get them to sign up for that? Because what we have found from our own kind of testing and research and data analysis is when customers sign up for a prepaid plan, they're just much more likely to stay retained. We have the whole heat map of the retention charts and stuff, and 3, 6, 12-monthers, just the fact that you're even, getting their commitment, but then hitting their cards less often, they stay like 2 or 3 times as long as the monthlies.
That's super cool to hear that data. I love having those hard numbers. 1 month just seems to be kind of that average when people either start or migrate businesses. You just figure every month, this is something that we could use every month. So it seems like a great place to start, but it's interesting thinking that, 1 month might not be the best way to go about that. So I think things like price and things like structure and onboarding flow and all of that kind of things, those are kind of like hard statistics and hard data and numbers. When we start talking about retention in terms of like community, like you mentioned, Facebook groups, all those kind of things, how does that also play a role? And is that measurable, or do you kind of just put a couple eggs in a basket and say, hopefully this community keeps people together?
So, I mean, it's been, especially because we don't own the Facebook group, right? I mean, like Facebook owns that data,
Totally.
and there's not a lot of analytics you can unfortunately do. I mean, one day maybe we have the resources, we can build our own forums or something, we're gonna run some analysis, but that's like a whole separate thing. In our case, what we kind of do is slightly more anecdotal, just seeing and monitoring and kind of engaging the conversations in our Facebook group to see if it's like beneficial for customers and for just members in general. Where good examples is it certainly helped us reduce customer support inquiries and tickets, because sometimes it's very basic questions the customers might ask, like, oh, like this mochi was moldy, blah, blah, blah. And they send a picture of it into the Facebook group. And then just other customers will respond, be like, no, 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 that's roasted soybean powder. It's like a delicious topping on it. It's not mold. You can eat it. It's great. And that's like, that already saved us a ticket or two right there, right? Of back and forth and explaining. And those things are common, where people even asking like, oh, how long does it take for the box to ship to the UK specifically? And UK customers will respond and be like, oh, it takes me about a week. It's all of that is already great. And just seeing that the overall vibe is really positive in the space, or even I have friends that are in our Facebook group that don't even subscribe to Bokksu. And I'm like, why are you guys in the Facebook group? And they say like, because Danny, in the like semi-toxic space of social media, your group is so positive because it's just about loving food. And generally that's a very happy community, just like, delivering joy to people. So everybody is just so happy, and there's no politics being discussed in this group. And they just really like that. So just getting that type of sentiment and feeling, to me means that people are getting value out of it. And it's just like a plus positive for sure.
Taking a little bit of an off-topic question, did you just get lucky with this food thing that everyone just loves food, or was this kind of a planned thing? Like how did you decide, let's start a Facebook group, let's hope everybody's happy in it, and let's hope there are no negative comments?
I mean, I do think that in general, from my experience of having worked now in kind of the food space for 6 years, that people that either work in food or that are really passionate about it are generally really happy and positive and share things with each other. Obviously, that's not like 100% type of thing, but there is a bit of that. But I mean, it is something we have like rules in our Facebook group. We do have like staff and team that dedicate part of their time to like moderate and help out. Like we don't really censor anything, but certainly if somebody's being overly negative, we like, call them out on it and hide it and just be like, look, this is not the space for you to bring this energy into this group. So there is a bit of moderation that needs to happen, but generally speaking, it's a fairly self-perpetuating one, because if people only see positive vibes, they'll just keep the positive vibes going.
And what about user-generated content? Do you encourage things like unboxing videos, things like that, like taste, flavor, preferences, and all those kind of things?
Yeah. So, I mean, in terms of UGC, there's multiple avenues we go about doing that. So one way is, I mean, we used to back in the day run like a giveaway campaign every month where if they like posted and tagged, we would like select the best photo and they would get a free box or something like that. But then that actually took a lot of manpower to every single month to kind of go through that and look for it. And so we've found a way to automate it using this thing called Loud Crowd, which kind of integrates with Yapo and stuff, where it essentially, if you post and use if you register in advance and you post, you get like 500 points or something like that. And so then that just helps encourage people and gives them that immediate gratification of like posting their kind of Bokksu experience. On top of that, we have reviews. We have people like, we've been trying to encourage people to do like TikTok campaigns, like kind of like videos and things, and themselves unboxing. And we've just seen that drives, I would say actually back in the day, that was a lot more effective. Nowadays, unboxings are not, at least from our data that we've seen, just even in the last 6 months to a year, unboxings are not as titillating, I suppose, as they used to be. So nowadays it's a little bit more about reactions and people like eating the things. And so less about like showing the physical box as much as like, like that type of close engagement. So we've been constantly adapting and shifting our UGC strategy.
Interesting. That actually seems to make sense the more I think about it. I've gotten a handful of Bokksu boxes, and a large majority of the things are written in Japanese, which I do not speak. So seeing things come out of the box and just go, oh, it's this thing in a purple bag. Like, I don't know what this is, but I guess the interaction of actually eating something or trying something is a lot more engaging than just like, check out this cool bag. So I guess that makes a bit of sense.
Yeah, especially when it comes to food, right? I mean, so that's why for us, we have tested both Instagram and YouTube influencers that we work with. And generally speaking, YouTube across the board has just done a lot better for us. I mean, on Instagram, it's what, like a picture of the box, maybe even a short video, but on YouTube, they're like eating and engaging, and their reactions are very clear, right? These like YouTubers, you see their faces and everything. And that type of genuine passion for the food is what really conveys to the audience. And then people end up wanting to kind of experience it themselves too.
I think the average amount of time any user spends on Instagram photos or videos is 0.3 seconds. So I got to imagine that by the time you hit YouTube, people go to YouTube for longer videos. We're not talking like 10, 20-minute videos, but something where you can actually sit and watch and dig into the content and understand what it is, as opposed to kind of that quick hitting on Instagram.
Exactly. And as you said, like, it's Japanese. Also, these are not brands people know, right? These are all the family business things. And so if they just look at a photo of the snacks or even the box, it's not enough. There's not enough like information being conveyed to them. So you kind of need a little bit of a longer form video.
Let's talk retention in terms of scaling. Does retention get more difficult as you scale, or does it actually get easier?
That's a very complicated question, Chase. So like, it gets more difficult just statistically, in the sense that as you scale, as your subscriber base grows, even if you keep your churn percentage exactly the same, of course, what ends up happening, right, is your absolute number of people that churn then increases. And so then you have to acquire that many more customers in order to replace those people and then grow. You need even more than that, right? And so statistically, it does become more difficult just because then the acquisition goes up and the acquisition costs generally go up as you're trying to acquire more. Having said that, I do find that if you reach certain like milestones of kind of scaling and kind of customer bases and subscriber bases, there are now more interesting things you can do with retention. Good examples are like, you can maybe start A/B testing what goes into your box. Like if you only have like 100 subscribers and then you A/B test 50-50, it's like very insignificant sample sizes to be able to make kind of decisions on like, oh, this curation did better and had better retention. But if now you have like 1,000 versus 1,000, then you start getting better data, and that will allow you to then use that to then retain customers in the future. Or you like have like the community groups we're talking about. Once again, if there are only like 50 people in this group, it's a little bit hard for them to feel that type of passion and engagement. But if you're starting thousands in there, that becomes a different thing. So it's kind of complicated in both ways.
No, I think that's totally fair. That was kind of where I was leading anyway, is what are the differences between, scaling from 1 to 100 subscribers versus maybe say getting over 1,000 or getting over 10,000. So things definitely change. I think A/B testing something we hear all the time. Are there any other kind of creative tools or retention strategies you use to either increase retention or to kind of better the whole community, anything like that?
Yeah, so for us, I mean, partially even personally, I'm a big points and miles person. Like I love loyalty programs and like optimizing to get that status, however meaneful it is or not.
I guess flying from New York to Japan kind of makes that pretty straightforward.
It did back in the day, it's true, yeah. And so I wanted to bring that type of gamification into our program as well. And we did that using like Yapo and Swell, which was now Yapo Loyalty, kind of leveraging a lot of the APIs there, not just taking it out of the box, but really trying to customize it then with Recharge into our dashboard, into our custom portal of how we can then really get customers to make it stickier. And then the first thing we introduced them, is generally more of a easy thing to do, is to just introduce the loyalty program, silver, gold, platinum. We just introduced the diamond level because we've gotten so many subscribers, we needed to even create a higher tier. And just like setting it based on either points or dollars and giving them extra rewards as they kind of climb up this thing, especially if they've spent that much money with you to get the platinum or diamond, like please reward them. Like they deserve it because they've already more than surpassed the average LTV of your customer base. And so then that's what you kind of analyze and see, and you use best practices. So that's like kind of step number one. Step number two, which we actually just launched a couple months ago, is we're now even gamifying the subscription box itself, so that we're kind of calling it Bokksu streaks, where if they keep subscribed at certain points in their box journey, they will unlock extra bonuses. Right now, it's just points because it's easier to keep it digital, but eventually we would love to give them even digital like badges or some type of achievement unlocked, like that type of stuff just gets people excited. I mean, I have an Apple Watch, and if you complete certain workouts, you get these badges. They don't mean anything, but I kind of enjoy unlocking them. And so we want to introduce more and more of that into even this type of experience. Apparently, we're one of the first to have leveraged all these APIs to do that, because I just heard from my marketing team that Yapo Rewards Loyalty wants to do a case study on our gamification of the box, and that they're even producing their own like out-of-box version of this. And I was like, please give us credit. But anyway, yeah. So I'm excited to all these things have. We're just running the analysis now and kind of what impact they've had, but we have seen kind of, at least we've grown our customer base year over year, and our retention's actually gotten better, which normally doesn't happen. So we've, a lot of these things we believe have had impact.
Really glad you brought that up. I know we're kind of coming to the end of time. I want to double tap on that just for 1 second. Hey, you're going to need to find another precious metal to add above, diamond and platinum, because
I know, we're going to figure that.
but this is something that I've actually talked a little bit about in the past. I'm so glad you brought it up. It's such a simple thought in my mind that when you have customers who are so loyal and so retained month over month over month, and their LTV is just so much higher through the roof compared to everybody else, why wouldn't you want to continue rewarding them? Because you're not looking at this as a 1 month or a 3 month transaction now. This is a lifetime transaction. So it seems to make a whole lot of sense to continue rewarding those higher people, whether it's just something like a digital badge or like an Apple, completed your rings, whatever it is. Or even if it's something like, we'll give you 3 extra boxes and give them to family or friends, or we'll give you a bigger box, or doubling on product, whatever it ends up being. But it seems like such a simple way to keep customers retained. I don't see a lot of merchants doing it.
Well, I mean, it's a big part of it is it depends on the resources available to the merchants, right? Like giving boxes is a great example of like, is there a way to scale that automatically? Or does that have to be like handheld and like you create those gift orders for them? That's one of the reasons we're trying to keep it within points right now. It's just that it just all kind of automates the whole thing. But eventually we are going to have to, especially for our diamond customers, try and introduce some more like hands-on, like more kind of concierge-like service for them, I think, just because they have spent like $500 to $1,000 with us, which is way beyond our kind of normal LTR type situation. But but whatever is scalable and you can do with automation, and I highly recommend most people do for sure.
Last question for you, and I don't know if this is going to be difficult or easy. I'm going to throw you kind of a nebulous question here and let you run with it. There's kind of this ongoing battle of acquisition versus retention. What's more important? What comes first? What do you kind of put more of your resources towards? What's your philosophy on acquisition versus retention?
My philosophy is that it depends on the stage and the, once again, resourcing of the company. In the beginning, it's all acquisition. Like it's a lot easier to kind of acquire customers, and early customers you acquire anyway are generally more loyal and they're kind of the first ones. So you don't have to work too hard on them, but then there will be some inflection point that it becomes very expensive to acquire a lot of customers. So you do have to invest into retention, and retention's a very long-term game, right? Whatever you invest now will take 6 months to bear fruit. And that's sometimes hard for merchants to make that type of mental plan and that investment and sacrifice, because it may not even pan out 6 months from now. However, I would say it really depends on the industry, but roughly as soon as you get to like 1,000 subscribers, retention starts becoming important. And then like you have to really focus on both. You can never stop with acquisition. However, what we have found, at least with our business, is though people subscribe all throughout the year, there is some seasonality. Like we're a very giftable, beautiful, delicious product. So for us, like we see October to March is like a really hot time for us. And now that we've seen this year over year for the last 5 years or so, like our plan is to like hit hard on acquisition in those months, just because CACs are better. Like people are more likely to convert. And then for the other months where it's a bit of a struggle to acquire customers, and you have to pay through the roof for it, that's when we focus on retention. That's when we then invest into a lot of this more loyalty. And having the seasonal cycle will then take some of the pressure off too. So you don't have to constantly be acquiring, especially if it's too expensive.
I think that about sums it up. Danny, it seems like you and Bokksu are on the forefront of subscription industry and really the world here. So congratulations on that. Thank you so much for joining. And Tina, I'll kick it back over to you.
Awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was really awesome to learn, not just about how you've built the subscription program, but you've really built like a full community around it. And I think that's so amazing. So thank you for sharing. Before we wrap up though, I'd love to tell people, where can they learn more about Bokksu?
Yeah, they can certainly go and visit bokksu.com, Bokksu. You probably can't read it on my shirt here too much, but you visit it, you can both subscribe to the box, and we have Bokksu Market, the one-time marketplace. We now have over 500 SKUs. and products of not only snacks, but like Japanese kitchenware, house decor, knives, like beautiful handcrafted glassware, all that type of stuff. That's all from these family businesses throughout Japan.
Amazing. And Chase, where can people learn more about Recharge?
Rechargepayments.com. Simple and straightforward. I don't have a shirt though. Again, Danny's one of them.
Perfect. Thank you both. And for anyone that's still listening in, we have an ebook that you can download. It features the stories, tactics, metrics, and pretty much everything you need to do D2C across the entire customer journey. So I'll link to that in the comments and you can download it for free. And thanks so much for watching. We'll see you at our next episode.